Hello Internet, hello War of the Visions fans, I'm Jackie Fox. In our last video we stopped off by talking about Fang, but I didn't mention, and this is a pretty neat bonus for this collaboration, that all of the other units seem to be getting some sort of upgrade as well. Even though the Pixel Remaster gave them all reincarnation and MA2s, they are getting additional adjustments as well.
From that day forth, I was reborn the cleverest and hardiest of the hardy!
But what I'm most excited about, and look, minor spoiler here, it is, if you're up to date in story, already available. She was revealed a bit before she came out, even before Dario came out. But I am super excited.
My, this is rather confounding. Why did I bother making these masks if you're not going to mask your mugs with them?
You!
Super excited. Definitely pulling this character 100%. And, like, it doesn't even necessarily matter that she's good. I'm a big Oldoa fan. Not even that I like the unit Oldoa, but Oldoa is a character in the story, and anything, literally anything, that gives them the excuse to pay Morgan Berry more money to voice this character.
No, you too? Is this really a good idea, Lady Strategist?
Nope, I'd be mightily surprised if it was, but... oops, I beg your pardon.
Worry not. Simply focus on what you must see done and concern yourself with naught else.
Anything. To be honest with you, I don't know what her JP voice actress sounds like.
そう。あの時から、オルドアちゃんは誰よりも賢く、頼れる女に生まれ変わったのです!
Oh, okay. But, you know, give these ladies some more money to give us more Oldoa content. I love it. So, first, because everything I'm going to say here is going to be relatively positive. I'm pretty certain. Just kind of rehearsing this in my head, it all feels very positive, and some of the downsides are a little bit easy to overlook in videos like this because I don't go in depth on the stats. But this is going to be a tank character, and for herself especially, but generally all tanks, like, she has a lot of the same weaknesses that a lot of other tanks do. 1, she's kind of slow. 2, she does not have a high attack value necessarily. And 3, she isn't very accurate either, so she could have real problems running into evasion. And like most tanks, none of these things necessarily matter, and it's kind of the way that most tanks are handicapped so that they can double down on the things that make them better tanks. But it is a problem for tanks in general. Also, she is a magically based tank, so she, in addition to other tank issues that usually have to be solved with the build that aren't perfect on the character, you're going to also have to figure out how to get casting time down potentially. You don't necessarily have to do this, but you want her skills to land, and we'll talk more about why you want her skills to actually be able to land more than you might would with some other tanks. Why it's more important for her as we get into her kit. But before that, just basic move and jump, 100 cost character. No heavy armor in here, unfortunately. All hat, cloth, and accessories, so that's real bad. When was the last time we got a good hat? Does anybody remember a good hat recently? Can anyone point out a good hat? But aside from that, we have her accessory here that's going to give us a lot of defensive buffs. 25 defense. It was good at a time. It's good in combination with other things. We'll see what else we get here. Elemental chain resistance 30 for 3 turns. That's quite good. Not great, but pretty good. And also grants the following effects upon hit for self. Negative 20 defense penetration for 3 turns. So this is going to reduce other people's ability to penetrate your defense. and the fact that you're getting extra defense from this, it's also making that defense more impactful. Defense penetration being as high as it is really the reason why I say that defense isn't as impactful as it used to be. So the fact that this brings in the much needed utility of getting rid of a certain amount of defense penetration, although kind of a small amount, although I guess this ability could be pretty oppressive if it were much larger, but it still is an impactful amount of defense penetration, and it almost guarantees that in most scenarios, your defense will mitigate some amount of damage. Unless people are running like 120% defense penetration, which I think in most cases isn't even possible, then this is going to cause your defense to do something. It may not do a lot if they have if they have 100% defense penetration, then they're still going to hit you like they have 80%. But at least this is going to do something to mitigate damage, and it makes your defense more useful. So really, this is a great tech increase for so many older tanks that are highly defensively based for a number of reasons. And I just think it's a pretty powerful TMR. It's also an accessory, so it can go on a lot of people. Looking at her master ability, increased healing power is very helpful for her. Debuff effect weakening is alright. It's only 15, but that's okay. And then single target resistance and elemental chain resistance of 30. So single target resistance of 15. On the Dream ability, this is looking to be a very resilient character that may have some self-healing potential already. Looking into the support abilities, it looks like the main upgraded support ability here is going to be 12% HP, increased chance of being targeted 5. We talked with Dario about how important it is to have initial hate. This is really key in any auto format to ruin the buffing. Like, you can put so much effort into how your buffs lay out at the beginning of a match, make your team super good that way. I've done a number of videos teaching you how to tune that type of thing. If you, I consider it evergreen content, so I don't remake this type of stuff very often. I can even send a link into the comments if anybody is curious about how to do that. But going up against initial hate, this will pull your characters in ways that you wouldn't expect and will thus throw that off. It doesn't necessarily make it worse, and sometimes I've actually seen some really interesting things happen that made my setup better. It made my team do a thing that I couldn't get it to do by myself, but usually it screws you up, and the more effort you put into your team setup, the more it can screw you up. So it's really good against some of the bigger tryhards in the game, myself included. Initial hate is great, but also, as I said with Dario, you need ways to refresh that hate, or you're not going to be a consistent tank throughout the fight, and a tank that just lets their partners get targeted and die is not a very good tank. So 5 is a good start, but we'll see where that goes from there. 12 more single target resistance is great, and then when conditions are met, autocast a 50% HP heal, or HP heal at 50%. Restore 40% HP at 50% threshold. There we go. So, very, very good, very beefy. Just, this is an incredible thing for a tank to have. And none of this is necessarily, like, dependent on defense or spirit. Neither of these things are physical or magical. It's all single target attacks. It's all times, it's any damage that reduces him to 50% HP. It's increasing his chance of being targeted, and his HP. These things are all very general and are going to make him a versatile. Are going to make her a versatile tank. Did I just like drift over into thinking I was talking about Dario again?
I do not mean to embrace conceit, but at long last, I have a body that fully enables my swordsmanship. Such liberation is dangerously enticing.
My bad. It's going to make her a very versatile tank, which makes a lot of sense with her whole strategist theme. The Vowed is going to bring in 15 defense and 15 spirit. This is maybe one that you might consider more if you're running her TMR on her, but it is going to decrease her magic attack by 8, which isn't a ton, but it's not good necessarily. But it can make her a lot generally beefier, and again, this points into more of a generalist tank direction, whereas Dario was a bit more of a magically oriented counter. Her other main subjob can reduce physical damage taken by 10% and increase her strike resistance by 12. This obviously is much more in the physical, as there's like one magical strike damage attack. One. So this is definitely a physical counter. This allows her to lean more away from that generality into physicality. I think it's helpful for her. Probably better than the 20 accuracy and 12 defense that's offered by the Scholar. And you may consider, maybe, I think if you're not running her other main job support skill, you're probably running the decreased skill activation time. But at only 200, there are probably better ways of dealing with that. But, you know, you may find that it's something that you kind of need for your build. She has a 20% chance countering all damage, both physical and magical, so that's quite nice. And it's going to reduce the damage taken by 30%. So this is just generally pretty good. There's also a self-heal chance also to counter all damage at 20%. That's pretty nice as well, especially once you see the rest of her kit, the way that healing power works into it. Her being able to heal herself back up, kind of like Dialdo can do, is going to be pretty important. And I think in general, even though there's definitely parts of her kit that remind me more of Kilfei, original Kilfei, she reminds me of Dialdo a lot in terms of like comparisons to modern units. So if you're familiar with the way that Dialdo works for Earth, it seems like she's going to be really similar, even sharing the affinity for single target resistance as well. And then chance to counter all damage with kind of a basic magical damage attack with a middling range. It's okay, but I would really rather have either of the first skills. Her basic attack, although it does have a short range, and short ranges are kind of another thing that seem to plague her kit, but this is a tank. They're drawing people in close to them. Short ranges don't matter as much. Basic attack, so 121 modifier. It's going to increase her defense and spirit by 20 for 3 turns. Again, this is more usable for her if you consider her TMR. That's kind of an interesting buff, though I don't think that the two sources stack, unfortunately. But it also gives her, when enemy target is killed, automatically cast another attack after, or another attack skill, yeah. And this is going to increase HP for self, so this is going to be 120 mod, so that's right there around like a cure level, kind of a basic heal. Yeah, it's also the same mod as her counter. So, you know, and we've seen this on a lot of characters recently. There's a lot of synergy with, and it's kind of creating a little bit of a swingy environment where not only are you gaining an advantage by taking somebody out, but also when you gain that advantage, when they become down a person, you push that advantage even further by healing yourself. It kind of reminds me of like morale systems from like The Last Remnant, or even from FFBE, but it's interesting that we're seeing a lot more of this, and also really good for her because, again, there's a lot of reasons why you would want to push her healing power up, and some support to push her healing power up in her kit. So in a lot of ways she can be like Snow, except that she has a lot more sources of that automatic heal, and her it doesn't require as much setup, in that is a support activated ability for her, and also has it in her counters as well, and even in this basic attack. That being said, she's a tank. I'm not sure how many times she's going to be taking people out with this, but often when characters get this kind of skill, it's one that they like to wait until they can take somebody out with it. They'll find a good time for it. But also I want to point out that getting the defense and spirit increase for very little AP on a basic attack is also one of the things that makes Alphonse such an incredible tank. And it's just value city for an attack. Unfortunately, though, it is reflectable. So her first main buff is going to give courage, first off. It's also, while she has courage active, going to, for 3 turns, and if courage is active, she will get AoE resistance 20, Protect and Shell. Also, those are conditional for 3 turns. However, you'll see here that she can absorb 30% of damage done for self as long as she has Courage. So until she goes down to 1 HP, she will be able to absorb 30% of all damage that she does. There is not a time limit on this. She just does it until you get her to that threshold or use Courage removal. Now, these things are getting a little bit more common, and I'm not usually a big fan of these kind of all your eggs in one basket strategies. However, it is Courage, and that's not quite as meta to remove as Re-Raise at the moment. And the fact that you have something that's going to keep you as a tank, who's bound to have like 15 to 20k HP, something that can keep you topped off and keep you from getting to Courage, I think this has an incredible synergy, and man, this buff is great on a tank. I really, really like it. And once again, you're getting Protect, Shell, and AoE Resistant. All of these things are incredibly general, and that AoE Resistance complements all of the single target resistance that we've already talked about for her. She has another buff that is going to reduce damage taken by 50% 3 times for self. This type of barrier is probably going to dissipate very quickly because it will reduce any incoming damage, but also, again, very general. Increased chance of being targeted 8 for self. There are 2 casts of this, so she can get 16 potential hate out of this skill. And then it also gets upgraded to do an additional thing. So it does 3 additional kind of follow-up abilities. Or are these... Yes. Additional, like, follow-up skills. So let's look at what those do, because there's 3 of them. You can get protection from CT down. That's kind of oddly worded. You can reduce physical damage, so it's kind of like a physical damage aura, reduction aura, which is helpful for her as well. And one of the things that helps her lean into the physically defensive, which I think is really good for the meta, also really good for Ice. Ice needs a less limited physical tank, you know, like really they have primarily snow, and he's tied to a collaboration now. This is also a limited character, but not quite as limited, so that's all right. And then also she is going to give the effect to the allies around her, Dispel Auto Revive. And it's kind of rough actually for the Auto Revive units that you're now going to be seeing this and Alaya the Alabaster doing a very similar thing. So it's getting even more consistent that Auto Revive can be removed. So I think that Re-Raise units and even Re-Raise Protection, even the Re-Raise Protection archetype, is falling apart even more than it was as soon as it launched. So that is what it is, and that is a heck of a lot of things for one skill. So next, how can we do some damage here? Select up to 2 targets for 30 AP. Not a great range, unfortunately. It gets upgraded to absorb 30% of damage done. I believe this will stack with the previous. So if she has her courage up, she's also going to be absorbing an additional 30% of damage done, which is going to be pretty nuts. Although, again, she's not going to be a super damage dealer, so it may take that to really get a significant heal off of her. Although, remember again that heal is also modified and increased by her healing power. All that being said, it's also going to give her a physical and magical damage reduction for 3 turns, as well as a chance to inflict confusion for 3 turns on that target. That is happening after damage, but I'm not sure it's relevant. Also, it's a 200% mod, so this is a really big skill. Again, not a very big range. This is basically Energy Buster. This is Energy Buster. If this looks familiar, this is Killface Energy Buster. Essentially, Staff Mage's Energy Buster. One of the big differences, because that skill now has 100% hit chance, is that this is also going to decrease spirit by 30. Pretty neat. The one issue that I would say that this has here, especially compared to Killfay, not to staff mages in general, and Energy Buster, is that this skill has a casting time. And Killfay's, thankfully, is instant, but that's going to be a little bit of an issue for this. It is also reflectable, as was the previous skill, and it seems, now that I look at it, all of the offensive skills in her main job are reflectable. It's kind of a niche interaction, but it is important to point out, especially with Helena running around getting reflect on her LB. And then finally we have break magic barrier for targets. I'm not sure how that interacts with reflect, but it does seem to be reflectable, so I'm guessing that's a bad sign. It is another AoE skill, although wow, super close range. Again, 185 mod is pretty good, and it's going to decrease agility by 20% for 3 turns for targets, so basically a devitalize effect as well. Pretty cool. It's not incredibly stacked though, and I don't think that her offensive capabilities at any point in here are super stacked. Although I gotta say, with the way that her accuracy is likely to shake out, I am super happy to see 100% hit chance within her kit. Even a plus 30 accuracy wouldn't help. And I know I've recently said that I tend to like that better, but on a character like this that has basically no chance of hitting an evasion unit, they need every bit of help that they can get. That being said though, while I am pretty certain about her accuracy being pretty unfortunate, I'm kind of curious what her luck looks like and what some of these resistances are. So a lot of slash and magic resistance, kind of unfortunately, as those are very, very easy to cut through. But 25 strike resistance, she's going to be a very good anti-strike tank, and I think that's pretty important for ice. I mean, really, that's going to make attacking ice teams and hoping that Comral can like rip through them a lot more dangerous for me. Although Comral can remove her courage, which is going to be kind of a linchpin for this character. Now, it's also important to point out that another way that she is seemingly really good into the Helena meta is that she has 50% sleep resistance, much like Dario. So these are both going to be tanks that can deal with some of Helena's cheese at the very least. And also, incidentally, she can deal with Sadali's cheese too. So having charm resistance is also pretty excellent and incredibly flavorful. Like, I think it's super cool. She can't be charmed. She has a loyal heart. Oldoa is the fucking best. Kind of the elemental resistances you would imagine. Again, like, no real accuracy here. Even after, well, Dream Awakening, I don't think it really adds any, but like, woof. Okay, back to the kit. Okay, so main sub job, increase match HP, raise HP, restore HP, raise 25%. So that's a pretty good fixed heal, in addition to raising her HP. And again, as I've said before, the way that that works is it raises your HP cap and raises your HP as well. So if you don't take any damage after that point and that raises you beyond your initial HP cap, you will have 100% health when that disappears at the end of the 3 turns, which essentially can also make it a heal in a way. It's also going to increase your ice and wind resistance by 25 for 3 turns for allies. But A, not a very big buff, and B, even more so than Dario, I think it was, not a good AoE on this. So maybe giving her more HP is cool, but that's also kind of a basic effect, and I don't like what it's stacked with. I don't really like the skill at all. But she she does, and I think it's super awesome, especially with this range, that she can, as a tank, charm people. That's really excellent. It's also going to reduce their AoE resistance if they have charm. So that puts you in a situation where, you know, actually, I'm not sure really how that would line up with the way that, I think auto deprioritizes hitting units with charm, because they're kind of your ally now, at least until they get hit, so you wouldn't want to take that away. It really made charm a bit better as a status element when they fixed that part of the AI, but, so I'm not sure that you would really target them with AoE skills that often while they're charmed. But theoretically, that's very powerful, and I think we've seen another skill like that, and it was still quite good as well. So I'm gonna say that that's not bad. I really like it. Oldoa has definitely charmed me, so I'm looking at you, main sub job. That skill looks pretty cool. But let's look at these two sub jobs and see, like, just kind of give it an overview. The heals in Devout are not good. They are not high. AoE resistance and slash resistance for self. The AoE resistance, yes. Slash resistance, I'm not super happy about. The ability to increase ice attack and debuff resistance for ally, I'm not as excited about this part of the skill, but 4 turns of an attack and non-attack skill time activation decrease 300 is pretty good. That's about 30% of the total, like, activation time just taken away. And then we have another skill, kind of like the one in the main sub. I think this definitely blows it away, though. Increasing defense and spirit by 30 in addition to the HP raise, although it's only 20 compared to 25, and this also hits other characters as well. Also increases your healing power by 30, so for a lot of reasons I think this is just much better. That being said, I'm not seeing a lot more that I like in this sub job, and the skill that it's better than is my least favorite in the main sub, so I don't think Devout is really where it's at. I think there's definitely some arguments you can make for Scholar, though. Increasing defense, although it's only 15. Defense to buff resistance of 100%, so it can't be removed. Increased to buff resistance for all elements for 3 turns by 100%. It does things. It does things. It's okay. It's a buff. Her main sub buffs are probably better. Her main job buffs are probably better, so you probably don't need additional buffs from the sub job. However, she does have a law of time manipulation, which allows her to restore 300 CT, which is, again, out of 1,000, so that's like about a third of a turn of speed given to her, but it also decreases skill activation time by 350 for 4 turns, so this is even better than the other one that I pointed out. So you could, so this one is better than the one in Devout. It's also, I mean, both of these are considerably better than the support skill. And really, while that was, because that was one of the better kind of draws into Devout, like, I really think that makes this much better. I'm not impressed by this skill. Very basic. Not impressed by this skill. However, we did get Law of Geoassimilation. So she does have the Magic Strike damage, which also absorbs 30% of damage done. That's going to stack. Also, huge AoE, 185 mod. I love this skill. This is one of my favorite skills in this game. I wish there were more Magic Strike, but my dog's going crazy.
Indeed. It is not over until, dare I say, it is over.
See it done, I shall.
What's a life for tourist for the sake of his worship?
Nothing, for the great Oldoa has many. Yes, indeed, because from that day forth, I was reborn the cleverest and hardiest of the hardy.
Finally, the last part of Strategic Tank Oldoa's kit that we have to talk about is her Limit Burst. This is going to dispel all buffs for target, which could reduce their defenses somewhat, also could reduce their offenses somewhat as well. Both of these things can be handy for a tank, even though this isn't necessarily going to be doing the most damage because of that. Also dispel haste and physical and magical damage increase buffs for target. So this is definitely going to lower offensive capabilities for them, but can also deal with some of their defense as well. Might push the damage up a little bit. It is also a 200 mod, so it should hit relatively hard, at least for Oldoa's kit, and does have a decent AoE range on it, although this is very close to her. The actual range on it is pretty bad. It does absorb 30% of the damage done, so you're going to want this to do as much damage as it can. Again, this is going to help her restore herself, and then after damage, it's going to increase all attacks resistance by 15%. So basically, except for some follow-up skills that don't have an attack type, this is going to be pretty much all damage resistance for herself for 3 turns, which is something that we've already seen on, say, Celeste. Her Limit Burst already does this, but it doesn't do all the rest. I mean, it just does that, and maybe kind of some of this, maybe a little bit better range, but this does so much more than that. And for only 58 AP, which isn't actually that bad for a limit break either, especially a magical one. So this is really, really strong, and just kind of caps off what was already a great character. So definitely really like her, and I'm looking forward to being able to do a showcase for her in about a month, because I think I'm going to try to get her day 1. Also, if you're wondering if you're newer or a returning player to the game, or just someone who wants to kind of brush up, I'm also going to be putting out a video pretty soon on how, just step by step, everything that you do to go from level 1 to 140. I've done a video on this before walking through it, but I don't think there were some parts of it that I actually recorded, so I just went through and did all of those same things with Dario. So that should explain literally every step of the process, start to finish, to get to 140. And I know there's some people out there who definitely have a lot that they could learn from that, because it's, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The whole video is probably going to take at least a half hour just to go through all of the things as fast as I can. And yeah, that's a lot, and it may take you even longer to do, especially if you don't have some of the stocked and banked resources that I do. But despite that, it is still helpful to know how to do this without spending a lot of your viz, because people often think that, I mean, if you do have to go all the way to pity, it is going to cost a lot of viz, but if you do manage to luck out early, it's not so much that you have to spend a ton of viz buying shards to actually 140 a character anymore. Now, you may, especially if it's a limited character, still spend a lot of viz on them after 140ing them for reincarnation, but that's even if you want to reincarnate them. I don't think that it's super required, especially unless you're in kind of the top tier or trying to get to number 1 in something, and even then you don't necessarily have to max them out to get most of the benefits. Getting them to 140 that first time will get you most of the way there, but that would be where you would want to spend your viz and what you would want to be saving it for, especially if you do manage to get them early. And you know, it's cheap enough to take your shot with the 4 steps when you get those, that, you know, I think it's worth noting. Anyways, thank you all for watching. I hope you tune in to the next one. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.